Welcome to the Love Well by Doing Good podcast, where I have Paula Waterman. Paula Waterman is a certified professional divorce mediator in Colorado who has helped hundreds of individuals and couples navigate the challenges of separation and divorce with greater clarity, confidence, and compassion since 2012. After experiencing her own high conflict and costly divorce in 2011, Paula made it her mission to help others avoid unnecessary stress, conflict, and financial hardship. Drawing from both professional expertise and personal experience, she specializes in divorce mediation, conflict resolution, communication skills, and helping couples make informed decisions during difficult transitions. In addition to her mediation work, Paula served as a community pastor for 9 years, which is how I met her, providing guidance, support, and encouragement to individuals and families facing life's challenges. Her background in ministry, combined with her extensive mediation experience, allows her to approach each situation with empathy, understanding, and a commitment to helping people move forward with confidence. Her practical, compassionate approach has made her a trusted resource for individuals and families seeking a more peaceful and cost-effective path through the divorce process. Welcome, Paula.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
How do you feel when, like, somebody reads that? Like, whenever anybody reads my bio, I'm like,
Yeah.
and you're so much more. Of course, Paula helped my daughter navigate that, and I was a big part of that, and so got firsthand experience in Paula, in your expertise, and your professionalism, and your compassion, and your humor. That able to bring some humor into a situation when it needs lightening up, and um, you're very good at trying to help both parties communicate a good outcome. So I
Yeah.
appreciate what you're doing. I know it's not easy to hear
It's not.
those stories all the time.
Yeah.
And so I just welcome you. So, um, tell us a little bit about your story, whatever detail you want. You in the bio, I read that you went through your own difficult and costly divorce. So tell us a little bit about your story and what that was like.
For a lot of people, divorce is a pivotal time in their life, right? There's life before divorce and life after divorce for some people. And that's the way it was for me. I got divorced after 24 years of marriage and never saw the divorce coming. My husband at that time was kind of living a double life. He was an airline pilot. He had been having multiple types of affairs, but ended up having a romantic affair for like 3 years. I didn't know he's having it. Other things were going on in our life. And so when this came up, I was completely blindsided. And I had no experience with the divorce process in Colorado, let alone in general, right? I ended up getting a lawyer who was Christian and she was compassionate, but almost all of my friends and my coworkers and anybody, they didn't have any experience with this kind of divorce or whatever. Um, I didn't know that you couldn't stop a divorce. I thought maybe you could stop a divorce, and I had no idea that divorces are no fault. There's no way to stop a divorce if one person wants it. So it was a really devastating time for me because I was blindsided. My kids were blindsided. My husband at that time was really caught up with his affair partner, very much in the limerence and the affair fog is what we call it. And so he was not able to, he was a different person. And I was completely emotionally and mentally undone by my divorce. I didn't know how to function. I didn't know the answers, and the people around me didn't know the answers really. I mean, my lawyer did in terms of some legal answers, but in terms of just a framework for what I was going through or what to expect or even how to navigate a relationship with your ex for co-parenting purposes after the divorce. Nobody had any information for me. And so out of that horrible experience basically, I was like, I want to help people like myself who didn't want a divorce. A divorce was kind of thrust upon them and they had to cope with it. I wanted to help people navigate that process as pain-free as possible, even though it'll never be pain-free. But, as as good as can happen, and especially for the children, because the children are they're really the collateral damage in a divorce. And so that's how I got started.
What do you think, because we experienced this too, going through this with my daughter and my 3 adorable grandkids, is, one of the truths about divorce when you have kids is you're probably gonna see each other for a really long time, that person, right? You're gonna be in each other's lives, so
Mhm,
being able to even navigate how all that looks in the future,
mhm,
um, with parenting plan, and tell
mhm.
us a little bit, is Colorado really different than a lot of other places, or is divorce, that kind of process, similar,
It's
in
mostly Yeah, it's mostly similar everywhere. There's only Every single state has what's called no-fault divorce. A no-fault divorce means that you can get a divorce for any reason. There's no You don't have to prove abuse, you don't have to prove adultery, you don't have to prove anything. You can simply say, "I'm done and I want a divorce," and it will happen. Now, different states have different rules surrounding divorce, like how long you need to be separated before you can be divorced. For example, California is what we call community property state. So if you get divorced in California, everything that you acquired while you're married is automatically a 50-50 split. Colorado is considered an equitable distribution state. So it's almost always 50-50, but not by default. You can still negotiate, for example, the split of your marital assets. So states differ in that way. There are two states that still have what's called a fault divorce. So if you, for example, if your spouse was having an affair, you could sue the affair partner for alienation of affection. And even in some states, I'm not a lawyer, so this is not legal advice, but in some states, if there's domestic violence, Colorado, if there's domestic violence, they will consider that when it comes to time for the courts will consider that for parenting. So if there's a domestic violence situation involved, that may affect your parenting time. I don't know how it is in other states, but generally speaking, there is no fault divorce in every single state in the United States. Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? We can thank Ronald Reagan for that. He's the one that introduced no fault divorce. The idea was to free up the courts from such from litigation, basically. And in Colorado, this is the reason I'm a mediator. In Colorado, the court requires every single couple to utilize mediation before they will let you litigate in court. So even if you get attorneys, you're going to go to mediation. Um, it's just that attorneys make everything so much more adversarial, right? Mediation usually can help people not be so dialed up emotionally and kind of move through the divorce process a little bit easier than spending $40,000 on attorneys, right?
Yeah,
That's a
I
pain.
think it certainly can expedite things if the mediator, who's good like you, can help people communicate and help everybody negotiate, right? There's not anything that's fair. You don't really divide everything 50-50, time with kids and all that, but, you know, some things are more important to one person than the other, so at least you can navigate and negotiate that with somebody else,
Yes.
um, in the middle, communicating that versus 2 people, I mean, like, it's crazy to think, it's interesting because my husband and his ex did their own, like, they
Yeah.
got a book and they did their own because it was very amicable.
Yeah.
My husband didn't want
Unusual.
the divorce, but he was like, "This is gonna happen,
Yeah.
and so why make it more difficult?" And so they were able, I think Tom said he spent, like, $99, you know?
That's nice.
And, that doesn't happen very often, but, certainly having somebody like you that knows how to negotiate the system. So, when people come to you, what are some things that they ought to know? Like, do people just call you up and say, "Can I just even consult with you so I can figure out what this even
Yeah.
looks like?"
Yeah, I always offer like a free 15-minute consultation on the phone. People can schedule that on my website. And I'll just talk to, you know me, I'll talk to people because I want to help them. Really, my goal is, of course, this is my business, but it's also a helping business. A lot of times, not a lot of times, sometimes I get grief from, say, the Christian community because they're like, "Oh, you're pro-divorce." I'm like, "I'm not pro-divorce at all." I'm pro marriage, but just like cancer, we live in a broken world and cancer happens to people. And just because you take care of people going through cancer who may eventually die doesn't mean you're pro cancer. It just means you're pro helping people that are experiencing a tough situation. And that's the way I look at it. I'm pro marriage, but I'm going to help people that had to go through divorce like myself. You
Mhm,
don't have a choice. No fault divorce, you don't have a choice.
mhm. Oh, so you do the 15-minute, and then let's say I'm like, "I want more information. Can I schedule an actual session with you so that I can really understand the process?"
I don't I don't really schedule with individuals because one of the things about being a mediator is you're a third party neutral, right? You need to be as much as possible neutral between the two parties regardless of what's going on. And so if you meet with one person before you meet with the second person, it can have the appearance of non-neutrality, and so
Right.
a lot of times I'll be like, "Listen, I'll talk with you on the phone as long as we need to talk. You can
Mhm.
have your spouse or the person that is in the divorce with you, you can have them to call me and I'll talk to them, and then we're gonna get together for mediation, and then we'll go through the mediation process together." And that way, I send people the forms ahead of time. I'm like, "These are the forms you need to work on," especially financials. I can't do people's financials. I don't know what they have. They need to work on their financial statements. They bring that with them to the mediation, and I walk them through the rest of the mediation, I will send people, like, a flow chart so they can see the process of divorce. It's not believe it or not, it's not that complicated. It's overwhelming when you're emotionally freaked out, but it's truly not that complicated, for good or for bad, right? Even in Colorado, you could potentially do the whole thing online. Submit all the paperwork online. If you didn't have any minor kids, you could potentially submit your paperwork, meet with a family court facilitator for literally 5 minutes on the phone, submit the rest of your paperwork, let the 91 days clock out, and you'll be divorced and never see a judge.
And you still go through mediation?
If you yeah, usually, yeah. If Here's the thing, a lot of people think, "Oh," I mean, maybe your husband's one of them. They're like, "I'm smart. I can do this divorce paperwork on my own," Or maybe they don't have a lot to divide or whatever. Not very many people, Sandy, can do it on their own because they don't know the court process, right? They don't word things correctly. They don't think of, like, especially in parenting, people don't think of all the a lot of times when I'm doing it, I have some standard things for parenting, like how are you going to handle summer vacation time parenting? Are you guys going to have summertime vacation time parenting? People don't think about that, or
Or how are you gonna do holidays?
yeah, and people are like, well, we're going to do our Christmas together. I'm like, okay, but what happens when you enter into another relationship with somebody else? You're going to bring that person into your Christmas. So let's think about as if you weren't doing it together. And I always tell people, and this is true, when you're doing a parenting plan, especially a parenting plan, it's your Bible when you're not getting along. You refer back to what did we agree on in mediation. But when you're getting along, you can do whatever you want to do. It's not like the courts are, looking over your shoulder to make sure that you dropped off your kids at 9 a.m. in the morning. You know, a lot of people fall down on two sides. They're too relaxed with what they think should happen for a parenting or separation, or they're too freaked out about it. And really, the courts are not going to get in your business unless one of you makes a motion and asks the courts to get in your business. And you know what I'm talking about, Sandy.
Mhm. Yes. Yes, I do. Oh, I've often thought I should have gone to law school or something.
I
I
I
don't know.
just they
That's a
have Go ahead.
I said that's a lot of education, a lot of time.
They have a program here in Colorado called a limited licensure, where people like me or paralegals could get a limited license, and then we could actually represent people and go to court with them. But I'm like, man, now you're on the see, here's the thing about mediation in almost every state, I believe, but here in Colorado, it's not licensed and it's not regulated. So literally anybody, if they wanted to, could become a mediator. There's online training and stuff like that. And there's even alternative dispute resolution classes you could take, like up in Fort Collins, CSU, which would be good if you wanted to become a mediator and arbitrator for, say, the government. Like, I
Mhm.
was just thinking, the Iran and Israel peace deal, they're signing an MOU, and I'm like, "I do MOUs all the time," and I'm like, "I."
Explain what that means.
Yeah, an MOU is a memorandum of understanding. So instead of going through all the details of a settlement agreement, this happens even in divorce mediation. Instead of saying, "Hey, we're going to fill out all the forms and really get into the weeds," instead of doing that, we're going to write a general overview of our agreement, and we're both going to sign it and we agree that it's binding, and then we'll get back together at a later date maybe to fill in all the details of that, what that looks like. And so when I heard they had signed a memorandum of or they were going to sign a memorandum of understanding, I think it's Friday. I was like, "Oh, I do those all the time. Maybe I should be a mediator for the peace talks or
Oh,
something."
yikes.
I know.
More power
Yeah,
to you, girl.
crazy. I know.
Yeah. So, when you're in the process, when wouldn't you be able to help somebody?
Yeah, so if myself, for example, I went to mediation 6 times before I could settle down and do the business of the mediation because I was
And
too emotionally dialed
and
up.
that's another thing, talk about, like, the
Yeah.
number of sessions and that so people kind of understand what that could look like.
I do my mediations in minimum blocks of 2 hours, so we can go longer than 2 hours, but at least 2 hours. If people are amicable, like Tom, if they're amicable and they're like, "We're here just to get it done," I can actually get I can get all the paperwork filled out and done in 2 to 3 hours, seriously. But if people are not ready to figure things out and they're still very emotionally dialed up, like for me, I had my spouse was having an affair and I was blindsided and he served me divorce papers at church. We were living together and he served me divorce papers at church. Talk about a painful thing, right? I was not ready to figure out parenting and, our separation agreement. He'd been thinking about it for a long time and he was like, "Let's go, let's go." And I'm like, "I'm not ready." So I could not emotionally settle down and mediate until I came to some place of acceptance that there was nothing I could do to stop this. This was going to happen. I needed to participate. You
Mhm.
know, I did go to temporary orders where you have to, in Colorado, you can have temporary orders and then permanent orders. And temporary orders is where the judge will, decide alimony and child support and stuff like that. Alimony and spousal support, same thing. Um, and that's horrible. You get into the witness box, you are examined by your lawyer and then cross-examined by their lawyer. It's horrible. It's your spouse. It's the person you live with for 24 years, and now you're being, deposed by the other lawyer in a courtroom to make your case. Is horrible. So I don't want anyone to go to court because that to me, that was one of the most frightening things I ever went through. And now that I know about it, I wouldn't be so afraid. But I didn't know anything about it back then.
Can you do temporary orders where you agree on the temporary orders, or do you always go to court?
So temporary orders is when you don't agree on anything, right? So
Got
let's just say
So you have
you
to go and the court has to decide for you.
let's say you've been ordered to mediation and you tried mediation and you couldn't do anything. Now you go to temporary orders and they set a temporary parenting plan and temporary support. And then they set trial. It's like a half day or full day trial for 6 months or a year later, depending on their docket. So, see, mediation not only helps you get through it faster, because you could potentially get through it in 91 days in Colorado, but you're not going to these court sessions, which are emotionally, in to me, draining and devastating.
Well, and then you're putting the decision in a third party's hands.
I always
You it
say
really you and your soon to be ex-spouse could come out of both not getting things you want, right?
correct. I always tell people the power of mediation is that you get to make decisions for yourself. I said, "You're experts on you and your kids, not the courts." And while we need the courts, and of course we need the laws and all that kind of thing, the courts are overwhelmed. They don't really care much about people. Um, They're doing a job because it's their job
Mhm.
a lot of times. And so I'm like, "Man, don't expect to go and get this." A lot of people come into me, they're like, "I just want what's fair." And you know, Sandy, fair is a subjective term, and what you think is fair, a judge may think is unfair,
Mhm.
you know? And a lot of people base fair on emotional factors and things like that, and I'm like, "Oh, a judge doesn't care about that at all."
Right.
The only way you're gonna maintain power is usually through mediation and negotiating a good settlement between, and I hate that word settlement, and I hate that word negotiating, because this is somebody that you married and you loved and had children with, and now you're negotiating with them. Hard, really hard.
I think that also just from personal experience, we could talk about this a little bit more because you're certainly more have more expertise. But I think where I saw it get complicated was you have to trust that the other person is telling you the truth, especially around the financial picture, right? Because in mediation, you both disclose what you understand is your financial picture, not just personal property, but your bank accounts and your credit cards and your investments and your stocks and your investment properties and your Bitcoin or, whatever you have. And of course, if somebody has been,
And
you
that's
know,
where you might need lawyers.
yeah, if
Yeah,
you have an affair or something, already the person is hard to trust. So now
yeah.
you're going to trust this person is going to tell you everything about their financial life and so in many cases, they don't, either one. And so, um, what do you do in that case? Can you help them? Or is that when you're like, oh, I got some attorney names I got to give you?
You're right. Mediation doesn't work. I have a friend who, went through mediation. She got a divorce, and, I asked her about mediation, and she said, "Oh, no, we had to get lawyers." She goes, "But you can't mediate with liars." That's a good rule of thumb. You can't mediate with liars. So if someone is gonna lie and not tell the truth about their financial situation, that's gonna be a problem. The thing about mediation, again, which is powerful, is you can here's an example. Business people, you know this, Sandy, they may have a business and they write a lot of things off through their business because that's what
They
business
can.
people.
Yeah, they can.
They give themselves a low salary, so they reduce their Social Security taxes,
Right.
and then, if you had a lawyer would go back through your P&L and add back in things that your bill to Costco, your whatever stuff, would write that back in as income, whereas in mediation, people wanna use their P&L or whatever they're giving themselves as a salary. You know what I'm talking about, and that can be difficult because there's a disagreement over what's a person's real income, because income is what we use for child support and alimony purposes, right?
Mm.
So that's where it can get tricky, because if a business person doesn't want to really be truthful about what their income is, both what they get real and how they write things off in their business, that can be a tricky wicket. And unless you can come to agreement on income, then that's where sometimes a lawyer can be useful, because they can serve, they can do discovery. We can be like, "We want discovery on all these different things," you know?
And I know that, my daughter and I looked at that because of, the complication with, her ex owning a business and stuff like that. And even at that time, that we actually met with the financial planner, and she does a lot of work, with people, high net worth people who are in that situation. And she explained the whole forensic accounting piece, that you might have to hire someone who
That's
actually
expensive.
knows how to go
Yep.
find everything, as much as possible. And so, are you hearing cha-ching, 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 cha-ching? Like it can get really expensive. The
Yeah.
more complicated things are. And so, the more people can tell the truth and go into it and just disclose and try and distribute, equitably or in a way that everybody feels like they're walking out of something, the less it's going to cost you in terms of time, energy, pain, money, heartache, and for your kids, but not everybody can do that.
A lot of times it comes down to, what's your pain worth? Do you know what I mean? Or what's your peace worth, maybe, is a better way to say it. You can want to know where every nickel is, or you could fight about every nickel, or you can maintain your peace and say, "Listen, I this is close enough, good enough. I'm okay with this. I don't wanna spend another $50,000 getting 5 more dollars or
Yeah.
figuring, you know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
And some people are good at that, and some people are not good at that, Like, I was not good at that for a long, long time, and so I have empathy for people who are not emotionally able. They want to punish the partner who's leaving. Some it's funny because there's all kinds of different theories about divorce and who files for divorce or who makes the motion. In Colorado, you can have what's called a co-petitioner divorce. It doesn't matter who's in the petitioner slot and who's in the respondent slot. It can be a co-petitioner filing. So it could be that both of you agree on the divorce. Those are the simplest ones to do. That's not necessarily where one party's trying to punish the other, with the kids or with money or whatever. Those, to be honest, are my favorite because 'cause they're the easiest, right?
Yeah.
Just I need to
Yeah.
help with the paperwork and whatever. But people that don't wanna be divorced, one spouse wants the divorce, the other party doesn't want the divorce, it's harder for that left behind party to be flexible.
Mm-hmm.
They want their pound of flesh sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's my job to be empathetic with it. I have to be neutral, be empathetic, but also help them to be this is a business transaction that we're doing right now. It's not an emotions are not gonna serve us well.
Mm-hmm.
How can you do this in a business-like fashion? And that's difficult.
Yeah, because if you're feeling revengeful or you're feeling just so hurt, you want that person to hurt too, then you're going to get an attorney and it's going to cost you a lot of money because those attorneys are happy to get into every detail and happy to advocate totally on your behalf, so they can get everything for you, which isn't bad, except it's very expensive. And you have to ask yourself, is it worth it? Now, maybe for some people,
Yeah.
I guess it is, to me, I mean, I came here with nothing. I left it all.
Mhm.
Um, and that was worth my peace of mind, And then interestingly enough, because my ex passed away, I went back and had to pack all that stuff I left behind up. And honestly, at that point, I didn't want any of it.
Yeah.
It's like I
Yeah.
don't want any of these memories in my house.
Yeah.
So
Everybody's divorce is different. There's no rule of thumb for anything. I will say this, I see a lot of women. I don't and you're a businesswoman, so you get this. There's a lot of women who make equal money or more money than their spouse, and they're not afraid of divorce.
mhm,
The most high conflict divorces are the one where there's an imbalance in
right,
power, in money.
right.
So,
Or
people.
like, for example, like my daughter, they agreed she would be a stay-at-home mom for 15 years. So she graduated from college with highest honors. She had a career. She put all of that aside to basically make her career her family and her home. And so then when it came to how will I take care of myself? And quite frankly, alimony and child support, I guess you have to be at a certain level, but in her case, it's not enough for her to live,
No. And it doesn't last forever.
and it
You
doesn't
know,
last
it
right,
depends on the time.
half
A
the
lot
time that you were married, or what's that, formula?
Well, it varies state by state, and I guess, again, it's what you can negotiate. In
Mhm,
Colorado, it's half the length of the marriage, usually. Like, mine was 10 years. I've been
mhm,
married 24 years. I could probably have pushed it for 12, but again, you're like, "How do I stay out of court?"
right.
You know? Um, 2
If you
things I
get Paula, if you get married again, does that go away?
alimony does, not child support.
Because I think people sometimes don't understand that either.
Mhm. A lot of people will get spousal support, and then they get in a new relationship, and they live together until that spousal support runs out, and then because the spousal support keeps going till you're legally remarried, so people just won't get remarried
Yeah.
till the spouse.
We're
I
not
mean,
advocating for that, but we're just saying that's the fact.
none of this is like advice. All of
Yeah,
this is just reality, right?
right,
Like,
right.
my husband and I, my new husband, we gave up 5 years of alimony by getting legally married. I had 10 years of alimony, 5 years into it, I got remarried to my husband, we gave up 5 years of significant alimony
Mhm.
because we felt it was the right thing to do. Not everybody believes that, and
Right.
more power to them, you know?